Hello, my quilting friends. My name is Leah Day, and today I am basting up this big, beautiful quilt block, and I've already taped down my backing fabric. Now, a little bit of prep here to get started. First thing I did was I washed my fabric, I starched it, made sure it was nice and stiff and stable. This is obviously pieced from scrap, so I took lots of different pieces of fabric and pieced them together, and I pressed those seam allowances open, and I did that so the backing fabric would be, number one, nice and stiff and stable, and those seam allowances would be flat so that as I quilt over them, I'm not going to hit just a big lump, on the back of the quilt. And especially, if that lined up just exactly perfect with some seam allowances from the front of the quilt, that would get really bulky. So that's why I like my seam allowances pressed open always. And I've sat here and taped it to my tabletop. And first thing I did was tape it through the middle. And then I taped further out. And every time I place another piece of tape, so I've taped on the opposite side, and then I place the second piece of tape, I always take it and I just pull on it ever so slightly. It just puts a little bit of tension in that backing fabric, and it just ensures it's going to hold really nice and flat to the tabletop. So now I'm going to grab my batting, and I am using a black batting. This is Quilter's Dream Midnight, I think is the name of it. And basically it is a polyester super, super soft batting that has been dyed black. And I really love this. It's going to be perfect for my block where I'm using black fabric as the background. Okay, so with batting, you want to take a close look at it. Some battings have a right and wrong side, and it takes just a little bit of practice to be able to tell the difference. Basically, just look at it and look for like little needle holes. That'll be what one side looks like if it's a needle punch batting, and then the other side is you're going to see those holes again on the other side, but you're also going to see a texture that's kind of like the pills from a pilly sweater. It'll kind of look like that because basically when the batting was needle punched, the needles went through it and pressed the fibers together to make the batting, and then on the back it'll have that just ever so slightly pilly look. And that's going to be the case whether it's a polyester, a wool, or a cotton batting. You want to just look for that and make sure that you're putting the batting needle side up so that the side with the needle holes very clearly indicated is facing up. And that's just, it's a small thing, and I'll be honest, I did not know the difference between the right and wrong side of my batting for years, so it's a very small, subtle thing, but if you think about it, the needle's going down through the batting this direction. You want your needle, when you're quilting over your quilt block, to be going down in the same direction. And so that just is a small thing, but it can sometimes help make the quilting just feel a little smoother, a little easier. So there we go. I'm just smoothing that batting out. This is a pretty big quilt block, so I want to take my time smoothing and spreading this out so I'm sure it's nice and flat to that backing fabric. That looks good. And now I'll grab my quilt block. So again, you want to center that up. Just make sure it's right in the center of the batting and backing fabric. And we always cut the batting and backing fabric just a little bit big, especially when quilting on a home sewing machine, because as you quilt from the center, the layers of the quilt can sometimes shift, and you want them to be able to shift outward so that way they can have, kind of space to move. If you don't let them shift outward, you can stitch a pleat into your quilt. The fabric can fold over itself and you can end up with a pleat. So that's why we quilt from the center. That's why we smooth from the center. Everything is done from the center to the outer edges, at least for quilting on a home machine. And we are going to also be quilting on a long arm too. So if you'd like to see how I'm going to prepare my block and get it on the long arm frame, that'll be coming up in a future tutorial. So this looks good. I have just a little bit of a ripple on this block. It just had a little bit of a struggle. I think I hit it with some spray starch and it just started to go a little wonky on me, but that's okay. If your piecing isn't absolutely perfect, that's all right. The more you spread and smooth it out, the better it's going to get. And even if the block is a little bit on the wonky side, that's not going to stop it from being a really soft, wonderful quilt. So now I'm going to grab my basting device. You're going to need something that will hold the layers of your quilt together securely but temporarily. and you can use bent safety pens, you could use basting spray, there's lots of different options. But my favorite is this one, and this is straight pens that I've bent ever so slightly, and then I've capped it here with a pen more. So this is just a flower head pen, and I've put a little bend in it, just with my thumb and forefinger. And now I'm going to insert that into the quilt, and I want to make sure to go through all 3 layers. So I kind of drag the pen very lightly against my tabletop, and then I cap it with a pen more. And this is basically a silicone nugget. It's made out of the same stuff that baby pacifiers are made out of. It's nice and dense, and basically it's self-healing. So you can stab it with the pen and hold it in place, and it's going to work time and time and time again. And it holds the pen nice and securely so that you can get your quilting done. But as you're doing it, you can take these out so easily. You just pull on it a little bit and it comes right out. And I love that. It's really hard to baste with the bent safety pens. Number one, they're just hard to open and close, and they're kind of a pain when you get on your quilt. I mean, I use those for years, so please don't feel like you've got to run out and go buy something new. But I really prefer these pens and pen mores. It's just a little faster, it's a little easier, and I find it's just a little bit easier on my hands too. Now you can find pens and pen mores at leahday.com/baste. I have a little baste your quilt kit so that you can get pens and pen mores together in a little kit and be able to baste your blocks really easily. Okay, so this is looking good. Yeah, like I said, I've got a little bit of a ripple here, so I'm just going to kind of tug on that a little bit and stick a pin over here, and that'll stabilize it. There we go. And I'm just going to work generally from the center to the outer edges, just placing the pens and then capping them. And I like to make sure that when I cap the pen with a pen more, that I go usually right through the middle, and then I insert it so that I know that the tip of the pen is at least reaching the middle of that pen more. So that way it's going to hold nice and securely. You know, it is one of those things. This is temporary. So if you're really rough with your quilt and, or you don't get your pen mores really secured, they can pop off. So just keep that in mind. So I worked my way around the star, and now I'm just adding more pen mores, and I'm just going through the center of each of these scrappy stars. And I think that's plenty of security. Now it is kind of hard to see these because the block is so scrappy. I've got so many different fabrics and colors. So you just kind of, work out a system and know where the pins are going to be, so that way you can take them out before you reach them whenever you're doing your machine quilting. So that's it for this video. I hope you learned a lot about basting and you're ready to get your quilt blocks layered and ready to quilt. Now, if you'd like to learn even more about basting and more about the different types of batting that are available, as well as several different methods for basting your quilts, come and check out the Basting Basics workshop. I've taught an entire class on basting and talking about the different types of batting you can use, as well as tips for getting the best results from the quilts that you make. So come and check that out at leahday.com/baste. Until next time, let's go quilt.